story about a programming omission error. A deadly error that shook the aviation industry to its core. An error that cost the lives of 346 people, leaving families devastated and communities in mourning. This is the story of two Boeing 737 DMX fatal flights that could have been so easily avoided had basic software checks been carried out. A missing piece of fail-safe code added to the aircraft's computer system would have certainly ensured that these totally avoidable crashes would never have taken place. This code, designed to help control the plane, had a fatal flaw. A flaw that would instantly reveal itself as soon as the planes were hit by turbulence, in fact. As both of these planes were forced by the faulty autopilot hardwired computer code instructions into a fatal nosedive. A terrifying plunge towards the ground in both cases. A nosedive the pilots couldn't ever pull out of no matter how hard they tried, so they are totally blameless. Autopilot instructions subprogram contain no computer code failsafe instructions, alas. Summing it mysteriously, the actual code used was something like 10 comment, return from line 50 loop, deadly error. 20 if this plane encounters turbulence, immediately drop 1,000 feet at once, regardless, without ever ascending. Death process begins. 30 count number of descents in store as a variable, X. 50 go to line 10. Thus now the endless looping begins. This is very similar to the actual code used, sadly, and it highlights the appalling lack of logic of the problem. It illustrates the terrifying simplicity of what went wrong. A few lines of looped code written by a moronic cretin obviously caused such catastrophic consequences. Looped code repeated endlessly with no escape. A stark reminder of the need to check and double-check all aircraft software code well before allowing planes to ever take off. The pilots, those tasked with the immense responsibility of hundreds of lives, were kept in the dark on the first Lion flight. They had no idea that a hidden danger lurked. They were not told about this critical software, known as MCAS, on the first Lion flight. The software was designed to automatically adjust the plane's angle to prevent stalling, but it only kept pitching the nose down, never up. They were told on the second Ethiopian flight that they could disengage the autopilot, which was true, and manually winch the flap cables to avoid a crash. But they were never told that they had only 4 seconds to complete this task, which cannot be possibly achieved in such a limited time, as the forces of the flap's resistance on the winch would have increased exponentially to a level that could not ever be overcome. They wrestled with the controls, a futile exercise, desperately trying to regain control of their aircraft. Their hands gripped the yokes with white-knuckled intensity, but to no avail. But the software, relentless and unforgiving, kept pushing the plane down. Alarms blared, and the cockpit was filled with the sounds of chaos. Imagine their terror, their desperation, as the ground rushed towards them. In those final moments, they did everything they could, but it could never be enough. Every good system has a failsafe, a backup plan normally, except strangely with these two planes, a sure way to stop a bad situation from becoming a catastrophe. The Boeing 737 DMX, however, had a fatal flaw, a lack of a proper failsafe for MCAS. A simple line of code, like after several descents immediately ascend, a safety net, would have made all the difference. This would have stopped the relentless nosedives, and all 346 people aboard these 2 flights would have definitely survived. 100%. But that line of code was missing. Section 4, the human cost of corporate greed. 2 planes crashed, causing unimaginable grief and loss. Lion Air Flight 610, a tragedy that shook the world. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, another devastating loss. 346 lives. Families shattered. A global outcry. And for what? For corporate greed. To save Boeing time and money, they cut corners and ignored safety. But this is not what caused these crashes, so is totally irrelevant. Boeing, it seems, was more concerned with profits than with people. Their decisions had fatal consequences. They rushed the 737 DMX into production whilst ignoring safety concerns. The pressure to deliver was immense, yet no excuse. They put a flawed product into the sky, a product they knew could kill. And kill it did, leaving a trail of devastation. Section 5. Justice delayed, justice denied. The aftermath of the crashes has been a long and painful process. Investigations, lawsuits, and a company desperately trying to salvage its reputation. Boeing has faced legal action, but is that enough? Some call the crashes accidents. Others, corporate negligence. But what about manslaughter? None of these are actually correct. It is genocide, obviously. Any such corporation, a faceless entity, must be held accountable for taking lives. By letting people fly in what were 2 flying coffins by definition, as soon as they took off. Section 6. Remembering the victims, demanding accountability. The Boeing 737 DMX crashes can never be called just accidents. They were totally preventable, caused by a callous disregard for human life. These were not just crashes. They were preventable tragedies. We must remember the victims. We must demand accountability. We must fight for justice. And we must ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. The victims deserve justice. The families deserve closure, and the world deserves answers. Amen from Derek Adrian McNulty, protecting the people.